Hi there. A question I am sure you're all asking is, why do you look so tired? And the answer is, I don't sleep. I just wanted to tell you all that this is a project that I've been working on for months on and off, and I really hope you enjoy. I have put a lot of time and effort into this, and this is the final result. I want to start off this video by stating that what I'm about to say is by no means a criticism. I had a lot of fun watching The Mandalorian, and I recommend anyone that hasn't seen it give it a chance before continuing this video. What I want to talk about are some interesting directions The Mandalorian could have taken and the depth this would have added to the show. I would like to point out that I'm not here to try and force my views on anyone or inject it into anything. Most things I plan to discuss in this video already have major groundwork laid out in the show, but feel uncompleted or unrealized. I merely want to explain what the show might have been like if these ideas were further explored. I feel obliged to say that this video includes spoilers, so anyone who doesn't want the story spoiled is ill-advised to continue watching. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. Droids have always been a major part of the Star Wars franchise, and The Mandalorian flips this part on its head. Rather than being the helpful robots that they usually are, Din Djarin, or Mando, has a deep distrust towards the droids. This is reflected by the decisions he makes in the show, paying extra to get a vehicle piloted by a human instead of a droid in episode 1,
no droids,
and not wanting any of the pit droids to repair his ship in episode 5. His prejudice is also constantly reaffirmed when a bounty droid tries to kill the child Mando had to save, and by the service droids acting very human and silly most of the time. An important reason for Mando's behavior is found in his backstory. He was born on the planet Akvatina, and during the fall of the Republic, his village was attacked by battle droids. The droids killed everyone in the village, including his family, but when the droids tried to kill Mando, he was saved by a Mandalorian warrior. This perfectly explains both his loyalty to the Mandalorian creed and his mistrust for droids. From these events, the Mandalorian concludes that all droids are evil, and how could you not if droids destroyed everything you loved? Nevertheless, Mando is constantly forced to interact with what he believes to be evil beings, since not only is there a bounty droid on the same objective as he is in the first episode, this same droid is later repaired and reprogrammed by a major character in the series. All of this makes for a really well-developed character, and also an interesting real-life comparison. Perhaps we should question our reliance on technology and artificial intelligence, since it can be capable of great evils in the wrong hands. Star Wars has always provided us with a very sterile view of droids, so showing them as dangerous or evil is very refreshing and made the show much more interesting. However, the first problem I want to talk about lies in how the droids are presented. As I've mentioned before, a major character in the show named Q-Wheel repairs the droid that previously tried to kill the child, and converts it to a nanny robot to take care of it. Although this shows Mando that droids can in fact be used for good and are not fundamentally evil, he still views the whole situation with skepticism. This is of course only natural, but the way this skepticism is handled and later challenged is problematic. Instead of gradually introducing us to the idea that droids can be used for good, this transition is as black and white as it gets. The Mandalorian is simply opposed to droids through the entirety of the first season until a droid saves his life in episode 8, where it self-destructs to save Mando and his friends. After which, Mando does a complete 180, dropping all of his preconceptions. The show shies away from any deeper meaning it could have portrayed or any lesson that it could have learned its audience. By not having a gradual change of perception on Mando's part, it stops the audience members from seeing the rationale behind his decisions and changing of views. A similar situation to the one Mando faces in the show is the situation around gun control. A droid can be used for good or bad, depending on its user, just as a pro-gun advocate could argue that a gun can be used for good or bad, depending on its wielder. Also worth noting is that the bounty droid is directly tied to another social issue in our society. Even though the Mandalorian and the droid are both part of the Bounty Hunters Guild, the Mandalorian still decides to terminate it after it follows guild orders. The droid can even be seen as an embodiment of the guild and their values, since it's just an empty shell programmed to do whatever the guild desires. This directly relates to a real-life phenomenon, where social groups, for example, two sides of a political aisle, will often both frame each other as the bad guys, but rarely criticize their own people. The Mandalorian is able to frame the droid as immoral even if its actions reflect the stance of the guild he himself takes part in. Star Wars, being owned by Disney, has a habit of shying away from more controversial topics, as I will discuss further in this video. There's a reason the Chinese version of Star Wars Episode 9 was a few seconds shorter. But even then, if The Mandalorian had decided to share these insights, it wouldn't be a very obvious statement. Saying that droids can be used for both good and bad isn't particularly controversial. Nevertheless, Star Wars is eager to once again jump on the droids good train, without thinking about it twice. This is of course completely within their right, but the problem I have with this approach is that the show basically broke its back trying to make the droids the good guys again. In the final episode of Season 1, where Mando comes into a situation where the bounty droid will have to self-destruct to save the rest of the party, Mando actively tries to dissuade the droid from doing so, even getting emotional in the process. While there's nothing inherently wrong with Mando showing emotions towards a droid, in retrospect it does rub salt in the wound caused by seeing that the death of Kiwil, a character that helped Mando retrieve the child, went through significant personal sacrifice to take care of it, and ultimately died to protect it, gets no such farewell. In fact, his death is almost entirely skipped over for the entire rest of the season, only garnering a few seconds of attention at the end of episode 7. It makes me quite sad that a character that underwent so much personal sacrifice to protect the safety of the child gets less recognition than a droid with the character of a literal can opener. But perhaps my greatest problem with all of this is that the framework to fixing all the problems I've mentioned before seems to be already in place, but is simply never utilized or executed, which will be a recurring theme in this video, and ties perfectly into what I want to discuss next. Cue the Empire. The Mandalorian is in many ways different and unique compared to all other pieces of related media. Not only is it set between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, but it also features characters that are neither associated with the Empire nor the Republic. It is rare that we see someone who is not loyal to either one. It also puts us in a unique position. Rather than having our opinion about these entities forced upon us by the plot, we are able to make our own conclusions about both the Empire and the Republic. Although I do not support the Empire in any way, it would be interesting to consider the strength, security, and stability they might provide to a galaxy riddled with uncertainty and criminal behavior. With all the pain that the Empire has caused, would it not be better to just give in and not let it all go to waste? At first, the Mandalorian seems to consider this dilemma. In episode 7, the character known as the Client lectures us on the benefits of the Empire. He mentions the safety and security that the Empire brings, and that the Republic fails to provide the same. A similar situation occurs in episode 7 of season 2, where Mando and Mayfeld infiltrate a Rhydonium refinery. In order to do this, they have to escort a shipment to the refinery, and during this process they are attacked by Shida pirates. They fend off the pirates, and when they arrive at the base, they are cheered on by stormtroopers. Troopers of all variations, some having taken off their helmets, are glad to see the shipment come in, confirming that the pirates have been dealt with. The sense of community, and the fact that every stormtrooper is portrayed like a person instead of just a mindless drone that obeys the Empire, might make you consider that the Empire is possibly not as bad as you first thought. It perhaps also introduces the thought of what will happen to these people when the Empire falls, and furthermore, to the galaxy. What effect could the collapse of a galactic government have on not only its members, but its citizens as well? Will the galaxy magically become a democratic utopia? Will it resume normal business, just like nothing ever happened? Or will it devolve into chaos, without a firm hand to govern it? These questions are actually never asked through the entire Star Wars franchise, even though it has seen multiple evil galactic empires through its lifetime. Will we simply destroy the Empire and just let everyone figure it out for themselves? Will we keep the Empire as to preserve order, or will we use the framework and infrastructure that the Empire has built to create a new republic. But of course, those questions are never asked. As soon as the positive effects of the Empire are mentioned, it is quickly interrupted and swept under the rug. The show even goes as far as to kill anyone who even mentions the benefits of the Empire.
Why did Mandalore resist our expansion? The Empire improves every system it touches, judged by any metric.
So what should we toast to, boys? I can blather on about to health or to success, but I'd like to do something a little less rote.
Safety, prosperity, trade, opportunity, peace. Compare Imperial rule to what is happening now.
How about a toast to Operation Cinder?
Now there's a man who knows his history.
No, I don't just know it. I lived it. I was in Burning Con.
Burning Con? That was a hard day. I had to make many unpleasant decisions.
Yes, you did.
Look outside. Is the world more peaceful since the revolution? I see nothing but death and chaos.
Entire city gone in moments, along with everybody in it. We lost our whole division that day. Man, I was like 10,000 people.
Yep. All heroes of the Empire.
Yeah. And all dead.
Well, it's a small sacrifice for the greater good, son.
Depends on who you ask, don't you think?
What you getting at, trooper?
All those people. The ones who died. Was it good for them? Their families? The guys I served with? Civilians, those poor mud scuffers, died defending their homes, fighting for freedom. Was it good for them?
But we've outlasted them, son. They're eating themselves alive. The new republic is in complete disarray, and we grow stronger. You see, with the Redonium you've delivered, we can create havoc that's gonna make Burning Con just pale by comparison. And then they're gonna turn to us once again. You see, boys, everybody thinks they want freedom. But what they really want is order. And when they realize that, they're gonna welcome us back with open arms. To the Empire.
As I said, I'm not an Empire sympathizer, and I definitely believe that they are in the wrong. Freedom for security is never an acceptable trade-off, but wouldn't it be better for the audience to figure that out by themselves for once? I'm not saying that the show shouldn't guide us to our conclusion, but currently, every time it tries to introduce any interesting thoughts on the up and downsides of the dictatorship, it never lasts for more than 5 minutes before a decision is made for us, usually by killing the character that brought it up. Fortunately, the Republic isn't covered in the same way. The benefits and the drawbacks of the Republic are often explored and discussed. In episode 2 of season 2, Mando is stopped by Republican ships and asked about his beacon. After he fails to confirm that he's not an Imperial, he decides to flee the scene. After a short pursuit, Mando is forced to make a crash landing. In this particular scene, the Republic is portrayed as a menace rather than an ally. Later in the episode, Mando is attacked by spiders in the cave that he landed in. As all hope seems lost, the Republican pilots come to the rescue, killing the spiders, saving Mando and the child. The Republic is now once again painted as the good guys in the story. Although this situation might sound very similar to the one we discussed before, there are some major differences between how the Empire and the Republic are portrayed. The most obvious example is the time between the Empire bothering and saving Mando, which is much longer. This gives the audience the time to process events and evaluate their views. It also makes these events feel more separate. The second and more subtle difference is that the Mandalorian doesn't express gratitude towards the Republic. His attitude towards them is more or less the same, allowing the viewer to form their own opinion on them. If you ask me, it would have been nice to see the Empire receive the same treatment. Normally, this would be the point in the video where I would tell you my solution. I would tell you all the things that are wrong and that I have the perfect answer. But I don't. I make a point to not criticize anything I couldn't improve, but this time, I don't have to. Because the writers did it themselves. Throughout the show, we learn that the Mandalorian never takes off his helmet. This is because of an old Mandalorian tradition that the Children of the Watch still follow. On several occasions, the Mandalorian is requested or required to take off his helmet. He first takes it off so IG-11 can treat his injuries. Then he's forced to in the Rhydonium refinery in order to get the coordinates of the child, and eventually takes it off willingly to say goodbye to Grogu. Din Djarin goes through some very well written and comprehensible character growth, with his views being questioned by Omera, the Night Owls, and Migs Mayfeld. All of this is a great metaphor for people who blindly follow traditions without questioning them. It also supports the look on your own people point I made earlier. This all shows that the writers know what they're doing. They are able to write a complex, interesting, and still comprehensible plot and character growth. It's just these tiny little details that they could have added that I think would have added so much more depth to the story. I also feel like the groundwork for many of these ideas has already been laid. Why else are there multiple, several minute long speeches about the benefits of the Empire? Why is the Republic sometimes portrayed as the hero and sometimes as a fool or menace? And why does IG-11 get its own character arc? To me, this is evidence that all the things I discussed in this video were actually going to be topics that The Mandalorian would touch on, but were either cut out, or, the more likely version, the writers simply didn't bother. But hey, I hope my take on things made you think a little more about the deeper meaning of The Mandalorian, and, most importantly of all, that you found this interesting or entertaining.